This blockchain, we will discuss a lot of areas: blockchain wallet, transactions, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin design. Now, I would like to introduce our today's chief guest, Dr. Padmada Joshi ma'am. Dr. Padmaja Joshi is working as a senior director in SIDAC, Mumbai. In SIDAC, she is a head of CENG department and looks after mainly various e-governance projects and R&D in the area of blockchain technology. She had led multiple projects at a national level of varying nature from R&D to solution department. She also had been a part of various standard building committees like INDEA. Now, I will request to our today's chief guest, Dr. Padmaja Joshi will start the session.
Uh, Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Sulakshana ma'am, for introducing me
Welcome,
to
ma'am.
the
Welcome, ma'am.
audience. It's my pleasure to be here. Wherever blockchain is concerned, I'm really happy to contribute whatever I can to build the awareness. All of you know that the blockchain is the current one of the latest technologies, along with AI and ML. It is the most talked about technology I can say. Of course, it has multiple limitations and it is still an evolving kind of a technology. So there are lots of research opportunities as well as production or development kind of opportunities. You will see these days lots of portfolios coming with blockchain technology and a lot of requirement in the various kind of development. So we are currently having most of the developments in the POC kind of nature, but a lot of work is happening in the area of blockchain. So I'll be really happy today to share with you what is blockchain and how to work about it. So thanks a lot. Should we start the session? Sulakshana ma'am, should I, is it okay now? I can share my screen. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Kindly proceed.
Okay. Can you actually allow me to share my screen because currently I'm not able to.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Just
Yeah.
a minute. Yes, ma'am. Please check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is my
Yes.
screen visible?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, so let's start with the introduction of blockchain. I'm not very sure about the background of all of you. So I
Ma'am,
thought
just a
that,
minute.
okay, I will take it with first what is blockchain, what is the basic technical definition of blockchain, and then what is the technology used behind blockchain, what are the concepts in blockchain, then the applicability, development platforms, and research areas related to blockchain. So here, some of you who are having the background of network and security may find certain concepts which are already known to you. But I thought that I will cover because everyone might not be aware of them. So at any point in time, if you feel that okay, I should not be sharing this, or we can proceed ahead, please let me know so. Okay, so basically what is blockchain? uh, Blockchain, as it is mentioned, it's a chain of blocks as the name suggests. So you can see over here it is more like a train. You do have one engine and then you do have multiple bogies which are connected to this engine. Basically, here if we go for the technical definition of it, it says that it's a peer-to-peer distributed ledger that is cryptographically secured, append only, immutable, which is extremely hard to change. It is not completely immutable, and update only via consensus or agreement among peers. That is what is the basic definition of blockchain. Now let's see each and every word which is mentioned in this definition. Firstly, it says that it's a peer-to-peer, which means that there are multiple nodes involved who are able to communicate with each other directly. So it's a peer-to-peer kind of a network which is built. Now, along with this network, it also says that it's a distributed ledger. Ledger is nothing but whenever we are keeping any kind of accounts, we maintain all the records or transactions which are made one after the another in the chronological order. In the similar way, we are maintaining the records which are append only in this particular ledger. So if we look at this ledger term, it is nothing but a database where we are having transactions or records maintained in the chronological order. But this database is not like a normal database, the way we are having RDBMS, or which is a centralized database as such. Instead of that, the database itself is distributed, which means that whatever are these peers in our network, each and every peer, if want, can maintain a copy of the ledger. Now this copy, since this particular database is distributed, is synchronized with all the other copies of that particular database. Now, since it is being distributed with so many nodes, what we require is where will the security come from? So that security we are going to have with a cryptographic use into these transactions. Now, how that is being used, we are going to anyway see this. In this ledger or whatever the database that we are maintaining, which is a distributed database, is of the nature append only. In the normal database, we can modify. We do have update command, right? Or we do modify even a single field in the given record in any kind of a database, which is a centralized database. However, in case of blockchain, the beautiful functionality of blockchain is the database is only append. We cannot modify any of the existing records of the database. Another thing or another property of block, now how it is being achieved, I'll be coming to that, because each of these terms we are going to see again ahead. Then there is a term called as immutable. What do you mean by immutable? Is whatever you have written over there, it cannot be tampered, it cannot be modified, it cannot be changed. Of course, this is completely if you go by the theoretical definition, it is never possible to completely having immutable solution, but we are making it in such a way that it will become nearly immutable. So it is what we say is tamper proof kind of a thing. It's not completely tamper proof, but it will be tamper resistant. It will not allow you to modify or change any of the existing records which are there in the blockchain. And the last part, it is something similar to that of append only, but in addition to that, it will be updated. So if we are putting any kind of transactions into the blockchain, it can be updated only through consensus of the nodes. It's not that, okay, I felt like adding a transaction into the blockchain, I could add it. It's not so. Here, even to put any kind of a transaction into the blockchain, what we require is the consensus or agreement of all those nodes which are involved in this particular network. So am I clear? What is a blockchain? It's a chain of blocks, which is some simple definition. But technically, if you look at it, it is nothing but the network of different nodes, each one of them maintaining a ledger, which is nothing but a database, which itself in which cryptographically secured transactions are stored. The database has the property which is append only, and whenever we want to insert any kind of a transaction or record, it will be only inserted only through consensus. That is what is the definition or the technical definition of blockchain. Now let's see how this definition actually works and what are the concepts used in this particular definition. As I said, now if you look at this particular blockchain, there is a train engine which we call as a genesis block, and there are multiple bogies which are nothing but we call as blocks. Actually all the transactions that we do which are otherwise stored into the database are actually now stored into these transaction bogies or blocks. Now, what does the Genesis block contain? So Genesis block contains just the metadata, which means that what all these blocks are going to store, the information about them you will find in the Genesis block. Now, why Genesis block is required? It will be clear to you how blockchain is generated once we look at how blockchain is generated. Now, this Genesis block we will be calling as block 0 because this is the first most block and it is not a part of all the transaction blocks, and so we will be calling it as block 0. Here, if you look at what each of these blocks contain, you can see at the right side that it is block ID. Every block will be having a block ID. Then it will be having a Merkle root. Every transaction along with its hash. You can see that in this particular block, I have shown 3 transactions. And for each of these transactions, there is a hash included. Then there will be hash of previous block. It is like looping. The way we do have in trains that 2 bogies connect with each other with certain kind of loop. So that looping we are doing with the help of hash of the previous block. We will see how it actually works. Then there is a nonce. Now this concept of nonce, it is especially required whenever we are having proof of work or what do you know about Bitcoin. Okay, over there the nonce is used. It's not a mandate, but I will let you know that why this nonce is introduced. And then for each of these blocks, there will be timestamp because we want to know the chronological ordering of the transactions. It should not happen that, okay, some transaction which has happened later point in time is actually coming before, and so it may be questioned. Okay, so because of that, the timestamp will be there and block of hash. So again, this block of hash will be used to connect to the next block. This is the complete block content. Now you can see that every block is connected to the next block via its own hash. And since this Genesis block is the first block and there is no block before this, its previous hash, which means hash of the previous block, will be null in this case. And whatever is the block of this Genesis hash of this Genesis block, that will be then connected to the hash of the first block. Is it clear? Okay, so this is how the definition of this looks like. Okay, now sorry, by mistake okay. So we have seen that Genesis block is nothing but block number 0. It actually contains the metadata of what will be stored into the next coming blocks. And this Genesis block will have no previous block hash as such. Whatever is the hash of this block, it will be used as the previous block hash. Then again the hash of this block is calculated. Then again previous hash block is calculated. Likewise, the chain gets created. So actually, if you look at this, it is similar to that of linked list. In the linked list, we always put the address of the previous link list, okay, directly to the next one, and that is how we create the list. Or you can say how we are creating the human chain. We hold hand in hand, right? So if that hand is lost, then obviously the connection between the two is being lost. So to create that kind of a connection, the hash of this block is being used. I will actually demonstrate you this small concept using a blockchain demo. This is obviously not my demo. It's not a my demo, but it is already there on YouTube. You can find this. Here, you can see that the first block, which says that there will be data, there will be certain previous hash, and there will be the hash of your block. This is what is going to be the metadata. Now, as we had mentioned, you can see over here, the previous block hash is 0 because this is the Genesis block. This is the first block into the blockchain. Now, let's create a blockchain. Okay, this is the first transaction block we are creating. So I'm calling this as data 1, and I'm now adding this. Now you can see over here, to create that chain, what has happened is whatever is the hash of Genesis block, which is currently ending with 37CF, you can see over here, it is mentioned as previous hash. So here it is 37CF, which means that whatever is the hash of the Genesis block, it is coming as a previous hash into this new block, and then the hash for this new block is created again. Now I'm going to add one more block to it. So I'm saying data 2. I'm trying to add this, and you can again see that the hash which is created of the first block, it is now coming as the previous hash over here, and this block's hash, it gets modified or gets calculated. I'm going to add one more block to it to make you understand how blockchain works. Okay, again over here you can see whatever was the hash of block 2, it is coming as the previous hash in block 3. Is this visible to all of you? So here it is 4E53. You can see 4E53. If you try to match each and every character of block 2 hash, then you will be able to see that character over here into the previous hash. And then the block hash for block 3 will get calculated and it will be mentioned over here. Now let's see that we have mentioned that whole this blockchain, okay, it is supposed to be immutable or it is tamper proof. Let's see how. Okay, I felt that instead of data 2, I should have just left that space. Without space, I should say data 2. Now, when I said data 2, obviously because transactions have got modified, the hash of this block got modified. And because the hash of this block is modified, the previous hash got modified. And because of that, the hash of the next block also got modified. So you can see that this hash, previous hash into block 3, and the hash of block 3, all of them are red, which means that some record in block 2 is been tampered. You will be able to make out that it is block 2 only because the hash from here onwards is not matching. Now I will just do or modify, rectify my mistake. I did this, and you can see that now hash calculated is matching. Now suppose I try to make any kind of change over here. I thought that I will start a new one. You can see now hash of this particular block got modified. Because of that, previous hash of block 2 also modified. So block 2's hash got misplaced, and then block 3 also. So if we try to modify the contents of chronological order of previous transactions, you will see that it is very easily detectable in the coming blocks. That is how blockchain is helping us to make tamper-free transactions. Even here you can see that we have mentioned in the definition it is append only. We cannot modify the transactions in the given block, and which is very much visible over here that if I try to modify any of these, we are getting error. That is how this particular blockchain becomes tamper resistant. Of course, if this is the only block, if I was not having block 2 and block 3, then it was much easier. I will just recalculate it. So I will just remove this, okay, and do this. Or if I can do this, then I will have to recompute the hash of this. Then I will recompute, and then I'll recompute. But if this was the last block, I have to do minimum recomputation. So if I'm doing this as, let's say, dash 3, only this hash is changing, so I can just recompute. Hence, another strength of blockchain is the length of the chain. Bigger the length, more tamper proof it becomes. So basically, the chain plays important role. It's not only the block itself is playing some part into the security, but if you look at the complete chain, bigger the chain, the security is more. There is more possibility that the transactions cannot be tampered with. Okay, so that is how actually the blockchain works. And here we have seen that how the previous hash is actually connected into the next block, and it helps us creating the chain of blocks. Okay, now why do we need blockchain? I give this example. I think most of the talks wherever I have given is why this kind of a append only feature required into the blockchain. And this was the example which was given to us by one of the important person in Telangana. What he had mentioned in the government organization, you must have seen that these people maintain files which are having green sheets onto it. So if you are going for any kind of work into any government department, you must have seen that these files are moving from one place to another, and everything is documented into that file. Now, one small example which was given by the person to us was in this green noting sheet, which is very important, which is considered as a legally viable as such document. On this green noting sheet, suppose you went for some kind of a land record transaction, and the authorities you have given now your documents, whatever required. Now, since you have not given the bribe or some another reason, okay, let's say your land proposition, whatever you have given, is not approved. So what the authorities write over there is NOT, not, and approved, and sign over there. The file gets closed. The file is somewhere there in the government department. After few days, after meeting them multiple times, you realize that, okay, you need to give some kind of a bribe, and you decide to give that bribe. Once you give the bribe, that file used to get opened, and obviously there should be no record that, okay, earlier the file had come, at that time you had not actually given the bribe, or it was not approved. Okay, so for avoiding such kind of a record that earlier it was not approved and now approved without any reason, what these people do is, instead of not, in front of not they write E, that becomes note approved. This is because here we are able to play around with the existing transaction. If I modify a smaller thing in my records, I can create the completely different impression, and this will be a lack of actually transparency in the system. That is the reason why it was required that we should have a database which is append only database, where everything will get recording, and once it is recorded, nobody else will be able to play around with that data. One will be able to tamper with that data. And that is how the blockchain was required. That is why in the government the blockchain was required. So basically we have seen up till now that there are certain properties which is like cryptographically signed or kind of transactions are there. We will see again the cryptography also in depth. So why all this hashing and all is helping us in creating the tamper proof kind of environment. So basic properties of blockchain are nothing but its distributedness, which we have seen that it's a peer-to-peer kind of a mesh network, we can say. It's immutable or data integrity. We have seen why it is immutable, because if I try to modify any of the transactions, then its hash gets changed. And because of that, all the succeeding blocks, we need to modify the hash. all the transactions over here are traceable, which means that we will be able to find out who did which transaction. We will again see how. Of course, as I had mentioned earlier, each and every block is chronological order because every block has a timestamp over there. We know that which block got created first and which block was created later. And there is no possibility of double spending. Now, for all these properties, there are different concepts of blockchain which are helping out. What these concepts has, now before going to the concepts, let's see first what is the technology behind all these concepts. Okay, we have mentioned that there are transactions which are cryptographically signed. So we need to see now what is cryptography. There are two concepts of cryptography, which is hashing and public key cryptography. Both these are used in blockchain. Then there is a distributed network. We have mentioned that it's a distributed ledger. Now let's see how does it contribute into achieving any of the blockchain properties. And then Merkle root, which is another important concept which helps us to keep all the documents or whatever are the transactions in the block secured. Okay. Now I'm coming to the first part of it, which is called as hashing. Okay. What is hashing? You all might be knowing that whenever we are sending any kind of a data on network, we want to have that channel secured, and at the same time, whenever some sensitive data is stored into the database, we want it to be secured there also. So basically, we want to ensure the channel security, and at the same time, we want to ensure the security in the storage. Okay, how is it achieved? So first, basically, whenever we are sending say, any kind of a plain text, this plain text does not remain plain text. Some algorithm is applied onto it. After applying this kind of algorithm, what happens is it creates a fixed length kind of an output. That is what is called as hashing. There are different hashing algorithms available. Whenever you apply these algorithms onto the input data, now that input data can be one character, that input data can be one string, that input data can be a complete database, it can be one chapter, or it can be one sentence, whatever you want. That input in the end will get converted into a fixed size string, which is currently, which we call, if with the help of SHA-256, it's 256 bits. So whatever may be the input, the output will always be of fixed length in case of hashing. Obviously, since you are converting it into a fixed length, it is completely non-reversible. It's a one-way process. From the plain text, you can create a hash, but from a hash, you cannot create the original text, what you had given for this. Okay. So that is now another important aspect of hashing is whatever is the input, if you give that input to a given algorithm, let's say it is a SHA-256 algorithm or MD5 algorithm, whichever algorithm you have chosen, if you are giving the same input, the output will always remain fixed, which means that it's creating a unique footprint if the input is same. Another important aspect of hashing is, now suppose I made a minor change in the input which is being given. So it was having, let's say, sentence, I'm here, and then I put I'm here full stop. Both these become completely different strings and create drastically different hash. So looking at for any of the hijacker, it will not be easier to find out what was the input. It is completely non-reversible process. I will demonstrate you this hash so that it will be very clear to you how does it work. Okay, I'm having this online hash calculator and I'm going to use, there are different algorithms given over here. Some of these algorithms are now obsolete because there is new computing, which is quantum computing and all. Because of that, now calculations have become very easy. And so earlier versions of hashing algorithms have actually cracked And because of that, we are having with the latest one, which is SHA-256. Majority of the blockchain kind of applications are using SHA-256. So I'm having SHA-256 here. And now I'm saying I am here for blockchain session. Okay. And I'm now asking it to create a hash. Since it is 256 bit kind of a thing is being generated. You can see that it starts with 24, ends with 69. Okay. And in between there are other characters. Now, obviously, if I give this, I won't be able to create this back. I will tell you why. Now I'm putting this full stop. Okay. Very minor change I have done. I have just added one full stop over here and I hash it. You can see that it is completely different. It's not at all we will be able to make out that all the other characters in this hash was same, input string was same, only dot is added. And I remove this dot, I should be able to get the original hash back. You can see again 69 and 24. Now if I try to write that, this is the first session of the series. I hope you all are understanding. And now I want to hash it. We said that always the hash is of fixed size. I'm hashing it. And you can see still it is of the fixed size. The length, whatever might be I have written, the length still has remained fixed. Okay. Now, again, if I try to do this, I'm going to get the same thing. I try to now fill up everything over here. All garbage I'm currently typing. But if you see this, and now I try to hash this, you can see that the size remains constant. I'm now deleting all this and I'll be working again on the one-liner hash, which was created for us with SHA-256 with 69. Okay, so now this is the hash that we were having. Now, if I try to change the algorithm, let's say I'm going for MD5, you will see that the hash changes. Okay, it's the smaller algorithm also. So what I'm trying to bring it out is based on the algorithm, you will be able to get the hash. And if you change the algorithm, you will still get the hash, but it will be different. Okay, so it is algorithm specific. Now, if this is what is hash, is whenever I'm giving input, the output is of fixed length and it is non-reversible. And every time whenever I give the same input, the same hash is created. Looking at these features, let's see where I can use this kind of hashing mechanism. All of us know that, okay, whenever we are storing a password into a database, okay, we store its hash. We don't store the password as it is. So now whenever we
Ma'am, can you share your screen, please?
Hello?
Ma'am, can you share? Ma'am, can you share your screen, please? Thank you. Thank you.
What should I share? Can you come again, please?
Ma'am, now visible. Now screen is visible.
Visible?
Thank
okay.
You. Yes,
It wasn't visible earlier.
Yes.
Okay, this is visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
Well, ma'am, it's visible.
Yeah, great. Okay, so now whenever we are storing something into the database, especially the passwords, we store it into the hashed format so that nobody else will be able to retrieve your password. Nobody else can generate that kind of a password. And that's why you must have seen that whenever these days we forget the password, okay, that time we click onto the forgot password link, but it does not give us our original password back, but instead asks us to reset the password. The reason behind that, because it is stored into the database in the hashed format, and from hash it cannot convert back. But whenever we type in our password, what happens into the application side, at the application side, is it creates a hash of this password using the same algorithm and just tries to match with whatever is being available in the database. If it matches, then we know that it is the same password. So basically, hashing is used to verify any kind of a data. Also, hashing helps us to keep the verification intact. For example, I wanted to see that earlier my database was this. Now, later on, whenever I want to verify if anybody has played with my database or tampered my database, we can just create a hash of it and check with the existing stored hash. So the memory required for storing the hash is much lesser, and still we will be able to use it and find out if the existing database or any kind of input is tampered or not tampered. There is another kind of cryptography which is more commonly known as a PKI or public key cryptography, but actually in that also there are two types of cryptographies. There is a symmetric cryptography and there is asymmetric cryptography. What happens in symmetric cryptography? It is similar to that of our house lock. Okay, we do have a single key with which we lock our house and with which we open our house. The same happens into the symmetric key. What happens is whenever sender is trying to send a plain text, okay, we use this particular key to encrypt that data and create some kind of a ciphertext, so that if someone tries to capture your data, play around with that and send it, it will not be feasible because that person will not be having this secret key with them. Okay, so this plain text is converted into the ciphertext and then sent it onto the channel, onto the internet. Okay, and then whenever it is received at the destination, at that time, at the destination end, again the same key is used to decrypt it back and to retrieve the plain text that will get stored at the recipient end, or recipient will be able to read it. So basically, this is kind of a symmetric cryptography, which we can say that earlier days of defense, where they want to send messages to each other in the crypted language. Okay, similar kind of a concept was used. So here, a same key is being stored. Now this shared key, whatever we are talking about, or a symmetric key that we are talking about, is nothing but a mathematical expression. It's kind of a prime number, which is applied through certain algorithms. So currently you might have heard of Blowfish, or you might have heard of AES, DES. DES was the original one, but still currently we are having AES technology algorithm, which are used to encrypt any kind of a plain text, and the key which is given for this algorithm is used for encryption purpose by that algorithm. This is what is symmetric key cryptography, which is also used in our sessions when these are created from the browser to the server. The symmetric key is used for identifying or sending what we call it as a session key. Okay. Now, there is another key which is called as asymmetric cryptography. Here, the key that is used for encryption cannot be used for decryption, and key that is used for decryption obviously can't be used for encryption, which means that there are two separate keys, but these keys have to be used in pair. Okay, one which is used is for encryption and the another one which will be used for decryption. Now these keys are called as public key and private key. Usually the private key remains with whosoever is the owner of these keys, and public key may be distributed or given to other people for different reasons. We will see what happens. Now, let's say I want to send certain data to you, and while sending that data, I want that if you are having my public key, then and then only you will be able to read the data that I have sent it to you. So now that plain text, I will use my private key to encrypt it. There were earlier algorithms which are used is RSA algorithm. You might have heard about. Okay, so RSA is used to encrypt this kind of a key, and that algorithm will then work on this plain text and create a ciphertext. Now, if I try to decrypt using my own private key, still I will not be able to decrypt this message because only the public key, which is a pair of this private key, will be able to decrypt it. And this public key, if I have shared with you, you will be able to decrypt this. Now, where can I use this? Let's say I want to avoid using fake certificates. Let's say Bharati Vidyapit gives certificate to every BE candidate of their mark list and all. We know that many times whenever students are going to placement or otherwise, they also create fake mark lists or fake certificates. If we want to identify if this particular certificate is given by Bharati Vidyapit or not, what we can do is we can use Bharati Vidyapit's private key to encrypt each and every certificate or mark list given by Bharati Vidyapit to the students. Now, if there is a placement agency or any kind of a company, they will be having Bharati Vidyapit's public key. With the help of public key, they will be able to decrypt this certificate and say that, oh, since this public key is working on this certificate, I am sure that this particular certificate or this particular mark list is given by Bharati Vidyapit only. Which means that to authenticate that this particular certificate is given by Bharati Vidyapit, we can use this kind of a mechanism where private key is used for encryption purpose and public key is used for decryption purpose. Remember that only the two key pairs work along with each other. If I do not have public key of Bharati, I will not be able to actually find out that if this certificate belongs to Bharati Vidyapit or is issued by Bharati Vidyapit or not. Very recently, you must have seen that if you are using Aadhaar, okay, your Aadhaar is now QR code signed. If you try to read this QR code, okay, this QR code is actually encrypted using UIDAI's private key. So now whenever you use it to decrypt the public key of UIDAI, then you know or you are sure that this particular Aadhaar is actually being issued by UIDAI and it is not fake. Another use of public and private key is, now let's use private key to decrypt the data or message and public key to encrypt the message. Now suppose I want to send certain confidential message to someone, let's say Sulakshana ma'am. Okay, I am sending a confidential message to Sulakshana ma'am and I don't want anybody else to read it. In that case, what I will do is I will use Sulakshana ma'am's public key to encrypt the message. Private key of Sulakshana ma'am remains only with ma'am, and so she will be able to use it to decrypt the message that is sent by me. Now in blockchain, where may be useful, we all know that whenever these different vendors are communicating with each other, they provide different rate to different vendors depending upon their relationship, depending upon the kind of order they do have. So bigger the order, lesser might be the rate. Like that it works out. If they want to keep whatever is their negotiation price as a secret, what they do is whatever is the negotiation done, or whosoever is the party with which the negotiation is done, they use the public key of that party to negotiate so that this negotiation remains confidential between only these two parties. So whenever we want to maintain the confidentiality of the message, instead of encrypting with the private key, what we do is we encrypt with the public key and decrypt with the private key. That is how the cryptography is required in case of blockchain. So in blockchain, we have seen that the hashing is used to create the complete chain itself. Hashing is further extensively used in blockchain. And in addition to that, the public key or asymmetric key cryptography is used for every node as an address. So that whenever I want to communicate with another node, I can use the public key of that particular node to encrypt the transaction if it is confidential. Or if I just want to put it as the record, I will use my private key to encrypt my transaction so that anybody can validate it using the public key of mine. So that is what is asymmetric key cryptography, which is used in blockchain. Another aspect of blockchain, we have seen that it's a distributed ledger. We can see over here that there are 5 different nodes. Each one of these nodes are connected with each other with the help of mesh kind of a network. Over here, you can see that there are smart contracts and of course the ledgers which are kept along with them. And all these get synchronized with each other using certain consensus algorithms. So every node in the blockchain, okay, will be actually synchronized using the consensus algorithm. Every node has the smart contract. We will see why smart contract is required. And each of these nodes which are there in this network can participate or can do transactions. All these, whenever they participate in the consensus algorithm, in putting the transactions into the block, all these nodes are also called as miners. In Bitcoin, you must have seen the miners term used quite often. Okay, so there will be miners or nodes which are connected with each other. Now, what is the advantage of distributed ledger? We have seen that every block has transaction, it has hash, it has Merkle root, and then all these are distributed over here. So just for a while, I'm going to take you to this diagram. Okay, now over here we have seen that every transaction has a hash. Okay, then there is a Merkle root. Merkle root we will see very just in few minutes. We also have a hash. We also have nonce, and we do have the hash of the block. Okay. Now let's say if I try to play around with this transaction 2. Okay. In that case, if I modify this transaction, I will have to modify the hash. I will have to recalculate the hash, because we have seen that if you add even a single character or a delete single character from the given message, the hash drastically changes. So over here, if I modify this hash of this transaction, obviously I will have to modify its hash. If this hash is modified, the Merkle root also needs to be recalculated. We will see how to calculate Merkle root. If all these changes are done over here, I will obviously have to now recalculate the hash of this block. Okay. Now, hash of this block, if it changes, the next block's previous block hash changes. So again, that particular block will have to recalculate its hash. Then again in the chain, the next block, previous block hash would have been changed, and you will have to recalculate hash for this block again. That is how the tamper-proofness or security is built in using hash in the blockchain. There is so much of work which gets introduced, because you will have to modify the hash because you want to modify transaction. If hash changes, Merkle root changes. If Merkle root changes and hash changes, the whole hash of this block has changed. And in case of Bitcoin, there is further challenge, which is of nonce. Now, there is always a challenge given in Bitcoin. Bitcoin says that if this is your block, the block hash must start, let's say, with 5 zeros. Now, if I want to have a block hash starting with 5 zeros, obviously I cannot change block ID. I cannot change Merkle root because it is calculated based on the transaction. I cannot modify transactions or their hashes. I cannot modify hash of the previous block. I cannot modify timestamp. So what remains in my control is nonce. Nonce is nothing but kind of a random number generator, a random number. So every time what we do is we calculate nonce or random number and find out if now if I calculate the hash of the block, is it coming with 5 zeros, starting with 5 zeros? If not, I will again recalculate the random number. With that random number, again, I will calculate the hash for the block and check if it is starting with 5 zeros. Likewise, this is the only parameter that I can play around with to create the hash as required. This is what is done in Bitcoin. So this is also bringing the additional security, because making a change in one transaction is going to be very compute intensive. I have to create hash, its Merkle root, and then I have to find out nonce in such a way that I will be having now a block hash which is starting with 5 zeros. And in addition to that, we have seen that all the consequent or subsequent blocks need to recalculate their nonce and hashes because their previous hash block is going to change. So we have already made it enough complicated or to bring in security. Now, if I'm having further distributed ledger, it is not at a single chain. Okay, let's say still someone tried to further still modify certain transactions in the block, let's say at this particular node. Then all the copies of all those chains which are available over here will be able to say that it is not matching with the copy that I am having. And they will also be able to find out the culprit who modified the contents, because these 4 copies are same, but this copy is different, which means that this particular node has tried to modify the ledger. So with the distributedness, we are further trying to make these kind of transactions secured, data integrity maintained, and immutable, or we can call them as a tamper resistant. So distributed part of this is helping us further to bring in this kind of a security. So it is not distributed just for the sake of it, but it is actually helping us out in bringing more security into the blockchain. Okay, now let's see what is Merkle root. We have seen that Merkle root also needs to be calculated per block, and which itself is going to be very challenging. Over here, you can see that there are total 8 number of transactions, T1, T2, T3, T4 up till T8. For each of these transactions, these are the hashes which are computed, which is H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6 up till H8. To calculate the Merkle root, what happens is H1 as well as H2 ka hash it is removed, so it becomes H12. Then H3, H4, their hash becomes H34. Likewise, we go on calculating till the root. So more the number of transactions, calculating more number of levels in the tree is required to find out the root of that particular tree. Usually, that's why one single block will not be having more than 10 transactions. Here we have seen 8 transactions, so that that complete binary tree becomes balanced. Okay, so which means that to even compute Merkle root, we will be having the computation of H12, H34, H56, H78, H1234, H5678, and then H1234, 5678. So many calculations we will have to do if a single transaction change takes place. That is how it is secured. Okay. Now let's look at the other concepts of blockchain. This was the technology behind blockchain, basically cryptography, that is hashing and asymmetric key cryptography. Then the distributed kind of a network, how it is actually helping us bringing in more security. and also maintaining the ledger of it. So it is a distributed database as such. And then we have seen how the computation of Merkle root is further enhancing the security into the blockchain. Now, let's see what are other concepts of blockchain which are different than that of the technology what we have seen so far. We have seen that in the node, which is a network as such, peer-to-peer network, which is a mesh kind of a network. With each of these nodes, there is a smart contract associated. You must have heard in Bitcoin also, in Ethereum also, that there are smart contracts. Now, what these smart contracts are? These are nothing but the executable code, the way we write in any kind of an application. But here, the additional responsibility of the smart contract is it should verify certain rules so that whatever transaction happens, it is validated by each and every node. So whatever are the validation conditions before putting any transaction into the blockchain will be written in the smart contract. So smart contract is nothing but the program that is written to validate each and every transaction and to execute the transaction. That is what is the role of smart contract. Then we have seen that in the case of the distributed network, there is a consensus algorithm which plays a very important role in maintaining the synchronous records of all transactions in all the distributed databases. So basically bringing in this kind of a synchronization is the role of consensus algorithm. Now, in addition to that, before putting any kind of a transaction into the chain, okay, synchronization or consensus algorithm validates these kind of transactions. Okay, so consensus has two roles to play. It is responsible for putting the transactions into the chain, or we can also say it is also responsible for kind of ordering, and secondly synchronizing all the transactions into the distributed ledger. DL stands for distributed ledger. And thirdly, now the architecture of database, which is completely different than that of our normal databases, because in RDBMS, as we have seen, we can update the records and we can write multiple functions onto it. Whereas in case of blockchain, the database is no update kind of a database where you can have append only, and it is completely decentralized, which means that there are multiple copies of our database maintained at various locations which are in sync with each other. Okay. Now, there are two different types of blockchains. One is called as a permissioned and another is permissionless. Permissionless is also called as a public blockchain, and permissioned is called as a private blockchain. Now, before going in the depth or in details of these types, I have over here certain platforms which can be used for blockchain development. Of course, whatever platforms I have mentioned over here, these are not the only ones. There are many others which are there in the market, but I have put some popular ones. So you can see that Hyperledger Fabric, which is very popularly used these days for the permission kind of a network. Whereas in case of Ethereum, it is more known for cryptographical transactions or cryptographical kind of applications. Corda R3 is also there, which is again providing the blockchain support. Okay, there is Sawtooth, there is OpenChain, there is BigChain, there is Indy. There are many other platforms which are available for the development of blockchains. Now let's first see what are the smart contracts. We have seen that these are some of the concepts of smart contract, okay, or rather blockchain. So what is a smart contract? As we have seen that it is nothing but the executable code or the program that is associated. Now this program can have certain conditions which are verified by every node before putting the transaction which has come to them into the blockchain. So verification of certain conditions is overwritten in the smart contract itself. At the same time, to create any kind of transaction or make any kind of transaction, How to do it? That executable code will be also there into the smart contract. So whatever we are doing with the assets, for example, in cryptocurrencies, we know that the cryptocurrency itself is an asset. If I am developing some kind of a land records using blockchain, then my asset is land record. Just a minute. Okay. And we also know that this is a program which will be available at every node. Okay. Now, these are some of the platforms, the languages which are used to develop their smart contracts. For example, for Ethereum, we can use Solidity. For Hyperledger Fabric, which is actually in Hyperledger Fabric, we don't call it that as a smart contract. We call it as a chain code. And that chain code can be written in Golang or Java or Node.js or JavaScript as such. So these are the more popular languages which are used to write the programs or smart contracts. Then what are the consensus algorithm? We have seen that consensus is nothing but asking or helping us to have a synchronized kind of a databases at all the nodes. In the centralized servers, we know that the decision is taken only by a single authority. The normal applications that we have written, client server kind of application, the server side application is a centralized application. So all the nodes or all the rules are written at the centralized application itself. But in case of distributed one, we cannot have so. Here, to bring in that kind of a decision making, what we require is agreement between different nodes. Okay. In case of Bitcoin, for example, there is no third party like RBI who will decide that if person A is trying to send some money to person B, is person A actually having that kind of a money with him? There is no RBI to check your account over there. Here, what we require that each and every node should say that, yes, this particular transaction is valid and this can be put into the chain. Now, to validating this kind of a transaction, the program that we have written is in the chain code or smart contract. So every node will validate from their records if person A is actually having that much amount in his account so that he can share it with person B. Okay, so that is what is a part of your smart contract. Now, when all these nodes agree that yes, this particular transaction can go into the chain, this agreement is based on the consensus algorithm. Who will decide now if 45 if there is a 5149 rule out of 100 nodes, if 51 node agree that yes, this particular transaction is a valid transaction and it can be put into the chain, then that particular transaction is put into the chain. Of course, I am saying over here that there is a 5149 rule. It's not necessary that every consensus algorithm will be talking about that rule. Maybe certain consensus algorithms will say that when all 100% nodes agree, then and then only will this condition, this transaction will be considered as a valid transaction and will be put into the ledger. So this kind of a decision is made by the consensus algorithm based on the agreement of all these nodes, and that is what is a consensus, what they are saying. Now, once it is been updated in one node, automatically now it is replicated into all the nodes. And so we say that consensus algorithms are also responsible for synchronizing all the nodes ledgers. Okay, so that is how the consensus algorithms work. Now there are different consensus algorithms available, and you can actually refer to the distributed networks where these kind of algorithms are already present. In Bitcoin, the concept which was used, I have told you that every time it has to calculate nonce. Okay, now what happens is there are multiple nodes. Each one of them are receiving transaction. They are validating the transaction. But now who will put that transaction onto the blockchain, whose decision will be considered as the final decision. That is being decided by proof of work. What happens is each of these nodes waits for 10 minutes to gather the transactions and create a block of these transactions after validating each and every transaction. Now, once they have created a block, they obviously have to compute the hash of that block. And to create that hash of the block, we know that they have to come up with a nonce. Now the system throws some kind of a challenge to them, and that challenge is how many bits it should have zeros in that particular block hash. So is it starting with 3 zeros, 5 zeros, 13 zeros? More the number of zeros, more difficult it is going to be. So this kind of a challenge is thrown by the system to all those nodes. Whosoever has now created with the block, they will actually work on finding out the nonce and actually calculating onto the hash. Just give me a second. Yeah, hello. Yeah, so now whichever node creates this kind of a nonce very effectively and comes up with the required hash, that block now can be put into the blockchain, and that particular node gets certain bitcoins free. That is what is kind of a prize for computing this kind of a challenge which was given to it. So that is actually helped all these nodes to participate into the mining process. This is what is called as a mining process. In the mining process, so that each one of them is actually contributing to the decision making of transactions which are going into the chain. However, the proof of work actually requires a lot of computation power. We have seen that compute hashing is not very easy kind of a job. Okay, which means that a person who has put a lot more infrastructure will be able to get more and more bitcoins. So this was a drawback of proof of work, and so the new platform which emerged after Bitcoin was Ethereum, in which instead of proof of work, the consensus algorithm that was used was proof of stake. Now, proof of stake is something like, if I'm having more stake, if I'm having more ethers is the crypto coin which is used in Ethereum, cryptocurrency which is used in Ethereum. If I'm having more ethers, then my stake is more. It is like any kind of organization or a company in which each of the person will be having certain shares, and whosoever is the maximum share is the decision maker. In the similar way, if now there are 3 or 4 nodes who have created the blocks and they are into the race, then whosoever is having already maximum stake, his block will be considered and put into the chain. Obviously, the major drawback of this system is like rich becomes richer and poor becomes poorer. Or if you have joined new into the network, then obviously you will not be having a much better stake, and because of that you will never be able to participate in much of the mining process. That is another drawback of proof of stake. That was a drawback of proof of stake. Now, another important aspect in the consensus is, if there are, let's say, 5 nodes and 2 of them are faulty, then at least 3 of them will be able to participate and will be able to tell that this kind of a network, this decision is made. But if out of 5, 3 nodes are faulty, and in that case 2 nodes decision might not be considered correct because it's still not the majority. So what we call this as the faulty nodes working is called as a Byzantine problem. Now, if we want to overcome the Byzantine problem, it has been said that you should be able to reduce the impact or influence of faulty nodes, which means then you should be having non-faulty nodes more than that of faulty nodes. So 2/3 of the nodes should be non-faulty to work any kind of a consensus algorithm, if we want to call that as a Byzantine fault tolerant algorithm, or what we call as BFT. Okay. There are few algorithms which very recently have evolved, basically because of the use of blockchain into IoT. So you will see that proof of assignment is basically for IoT, then proof of burn, proof of capacity, and many more, which you will be able to find into the distributed networks theory also very oftenly used. Though we are having lots of such kind of algorithms, if we are going for the Hyperledger Fabric, which is more popular kind of a platform these days used for the application development, blockchain application development, is Hyperledger Fabric. It is currently supporting only 3 kinds of consensus algorithms: Solo, Kafka, and Raft. Raft is the latest one. In Hyperledger Fabric, basically, all these transactions come to one node, which is called as the orderer node. Now, if my system or my network allows only a single orderer, then that is a solo kind of a consensus. Or if I have chosen solo kind of a consensus algorithm, only one of the orderers is being chosen and he only will be able to decide what goes into the blockchain or chain. Okay. Whereas the newest algorithm, which is Raft, it allows you to have multiple orderers, and by voting they select at any point in time which one of these orderers will be able to put these transactions into the chain. So though there are different consensus algorithms, what we have seen is proof of work, proof of stake, proof of assignment, proof of capacity, so on and so forth. Okay, existing platforms may or may not support all of them. For example, in case of Hyperledger Fabric, none of these are supported. You will have to build on your own and try to find how you can integrate it with the existing Hyperledger Fabric. Okay. As I had mentioned earlier, the blockchain is of 2 types. One is permissionless, another is permissioned. Whenever we are talking about permissionless, it is nothing but the public blockchain, something which is available in Bitcoin, let's say, where every node participates in the decision making of which transaction goes into the blockchain, or it is actually participating in mining. In case of permission, it is similar to that of the centralized kind of application, where only one node is selected who will be putting the transactions into the chain, and only then these transactions will be considered as the valid transactions. Of course, the selection of that particular node is been done prior to the actual transaction taking place. Okay, there are different platforms of permission and permissionless kind of a blockchain. We do have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and so many others in the permissionless. In the permission, we do have Hyperledger Fabric, Sawtooth. Okay, some of the examples of permissionless is cryptocurrencies, where we don't want any kind of interference of a third trusted party like RBI. But if I'm trying to build certain applications for the government, let's say I want to have the land records, then obviously the land record registration will happen only through a single agency. And because of that, what I will have to use in that application development is a permissioned kind of a platform. So over there, we will be going for Hyperledger Fabric, let's say. Okay. Now, different features which are achieved with the help of blockchain, we have seen how data integrity is achieved. Because of the hashing, we are making it more and more tamper resistant, because of its distributedness, because of it that nonce calculating, hash calculating, so on and so forth. Because of that, the data integrity is achieved in the blockchain, and that is how it brings the security also. No double spending is possible because we are writing it into the smart contract. For example, each and every node is going to verify if this particular transaction has happened before, or it is a correct transaction or not. Whenever we are writing any kind of a centralized application, it is only happening at the central location only once. Whereas in case of blockchain, larger the blockchain or larger the network of blockchain, so many locations your smart contract is running, Because of that, this check takes place at multiple locations and you can ensure that no double spending is happening. Why no double spending? Because for example, if I'm having a land record, it belongs to person A. Okay. Now, if that person A has already sold that land to person B, obviously it is reflected in our blockchain database. Now, suppose with the fraudulent activity, person A is trying to resell that land to person C. One node, let's say it has given bribe and it will say that yes, correct. Now person A that land. But there are other nodes in the network whose smart contract will also be doing that kind of a checking, that if person A still has that land, and they will be able to find out from their ledger that no, such land does not belong to person A, but it belongs to person B now. So the person A will not be able to sell the same land to two people. That is how we are stopping the double spending of the assets. This is the extremely important aspect of blockchain. The way you are writing the smart contract, since it is distributed, we can ensure that no double spending is happening of any kind of a unique asset. Okay. And thirdly, every node is being assigned certain kind of a public and private key. Every node, whenever it makes a transaction, it uses its private key to make that transaction. And because of that, we will be able to trace that transaction back to the user or back to the node. So that is how we are building the traceability into the blockchain. Okay.
Hello, ma'am. Can you
Yeah.
explain double spending again?
Yeah, I can explain double spending again. Okay, what happens is now blockchain is very important for ensuring that any single asset is not spent twice. For example, if we do have a land, obviously a particular land cannot belong to the same person who has sold it. Let's say I was having one land which I sold it to person B. Once I have sold it, there will be a transaction recorded and stored into the chain. Now what happens is, I am a fraud. So I want to resell that land to person C because actually person C is giving me more money. Now if I try to sell this land, and I will say that no, actually the land belongs to me because still that registration has not taken place or some another reason which I can give. Because this kind of activity happens very often. If I'm having a centralized kind of application, I can ask my database administrator to manipulate that kind of a data. Similarly, in case of blockchain, to one node, I can bribe and say that please remove my record of that I had actually sold my land to person B. But if I try to do that, and whenever I'm making a transaction stating that at this particular node, the land belonged to me and not to person B, the same transaction will now go to other nodes also. However, the other nodes are having the record that I have already sold that land to person B, and so they will not allow this transaction to happen. They will say that it is invalid transaction, and because of which a single asset, that is a land, cannot be sold by a fraudulent person to two people simultaneously. It will happen only to one person. So whosoever has chronologically coming first will be considered as a valid transaction. And if that transaction happens again, then it will be considered as a fraudulent transaction. That is how double spending of that land will be stopped. Have I made that concept clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we have seen that basic characteristics or properties of blockchain. Now, which are the different application domains of this blockchain? I have said that in the government, obviously, we have seen that there is land records, where land record is a single asset, and obviously we want to ensure that the land is not being sold twice or thrice or only once it can be sold. Similarly, now if I want to have kind of a voting, okay, once I have voted, I should not be allowed to vote twice. And if I have voted, my vote should not be changed. If I have voted to a single party, it should always remain to that single party and nobody should be able to tamper. Obviously, which looks like that in voting also blockchain can be helpful. There are already certain applications which are available whose POC or proof of concept is being done. Even in Rajasthan, health record management is already done. For land records, CDAC itself is having their own solution in Telangana. We are also working on voting. Then there is another important aspect, which is a supply chain management. So supply chain management is another where we will be able to track the goods from end to end. Over here, there is a use of blockchain because we will be able to identify if any good gets lost in between. Who is the one who is tampering with the good? So to bring in that kind of a traceability in supply chain management, use of blockchain is considered very effective. Already Walmart have put this kind of a application in production itself. In many e-governance applications, as I had told you, that any kind of certificates, mark list, where we find that there is a possibility that people might generate fake certificates or fake mark list, which we will be able to stop using blockchain. Blockchain has even another important aspect or use in security also. In education domain also, to maintain the certificates, it can be very useful. So there are multiple application domains and which are still evolving. It is not stopped because it is comparatively a new technology which is being seen for the application very useful. Of course, it does not mean that blockchain can be used in any damn application. If certain requirements are there, the way we said that there should be a traceability or there should be no double spending as such, it is extremely important to have a tamper proof kind of a records. In all these cases, may for example, very recently, Government of India, or rather TRAI, has come up with a distributed ledger platform for all the telecom providers, where whenever we are sending any kind of SMS, there will be very now less number of spam SMSs. Unless and until these SMSs are registered with all providers, you will not be able to send them. Of course, it's not person to person, but whichever are the bulk SMSs, those will be stopped because of this kind of a traceability which is being brought in using blockchain. So these are the multiple application avenue which has opened for blockchain, which will be able to help improve the scenarios. Now, different blockchain platforms, I have already informed you. There is Ethereum, Fabric, Sawtooth, Indy, Corda R3, IBM, and so on. Okay. Now, since this is comparatively a new technology, there are multiple challenges still with the system. We can't say that it is fully ready into the production. We know that whenever we are developing any kind of application, we can look for thousands of applications per second. Okay. But with blockchain, due to this cryptography that we have used, the consensus that is required, performance is a bigger challenge, and because of that, this can be a new research area also. Another aspect is scalability. The infrastructure required for blockchain is very high. So how to bring in scalability, how to reduce the use of infrastructure. Then interoperability, that if I'm doing certain transactions using Bitcoin, can I use these Bitcoins to give it to onto the Ethereum platform? Will they communicate with each other? There should be some kind of a conversion happening. Or suppose I'm having land records application and there is another application of income tax. How the land records can be considered by income tax for calculating the tax. So there should be some kind of interoperable solutions where their application communication should happen between the different applications. So that is interoperability an issue. There are issues related to the upgradability, because in that the schema of your database may change. Then how will it be appended into the same database? Because there is no data migration taking place. So these are the basically research areas and lot of research happening. So I feel as teachers, you will find that more interesting to work onto the research areas also, and lot of work possible in this. So I think with this, I will stop sharing my screen, and maybe we can have now questions if you are having any.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good
Ma'am, one
afternoon.
question is whether we can think application from the social point of view, maybe to, I don't know whether it is a genuine, like proper question, maybe to, keep the record of this big financial transaction on the government level, maybe to
Yeah, yeah,
reduce the
of course.
corruption and maybe to keep the track of all the transaction, what we generally used to hear, so many frauds and all happens. So whether
Very
we can
true, very
have
true.
of
Yes,
this as an application.
I completely agree. Yes. Basically, see, during the transaction, it may not be considered as a viable, but I request
Yeah.
to keep your mics off if you are not talking.
Hello, participants.
Yeah, another one. Another one was
Wait,
talking
wait,
something.
yourself. Hello.
Hello.
Please.
I think Ravindra sir, can you please?
Participant, kindly request you please off your voice at the back side.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
muted all, ma'am. Only
Oh,
the intended person should have to unmute himself or herself and
yeah.
please ask the question. Okay, rest, please mute your mics and your videos. Thank you.
Yeah,
Please
please.
kindly request you all of participants, please. Sir, once sir's video is on, sir, please.
Yeah.
Participant, right now, if anybody want to ask questions, you can ask to ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. I have one question.
Yeah.
Ma'am, how we revalidate the transactions, whether it is valid or not?
See, in the smart contract, you are writing the program. Okay.
Hmm.
So rules of
No,
validation.
not. No, after validating, it is added in the blockchain.
Hmm.
Yes, but once it is added in the blockchain and someone wants, how you can prove that it is now valid?
Hmm. Because once it is being put into the blockchain, it is considered to be valid. Before putting it into the blockchain, you can apply the rules through smart contract. Valid
Okay,
transactions are now in blockchain. But now suppose, for example, the land records example which I had given, if I try to resell that particular land, obviously what will happen is for validation rules, I must have kept that check if that land is actually belonging to me. Whenever now I'm going into the blockchain, I will be able to find out that no, this land does not belong to me. Now this land belongs to person B.
no, that is not my question. Suppose that
Then,
someone has done the valid transaction, and after that he is denying that he has not done the transaction. In
okay,
that
okay,
case,
okay.
in that case, how we can observe it?
Say that okay, the transaction is done by that person only.
Yes.
Yeah, for every person, usually a private and public key is being given,
Okay. Okay.
and that person's public key we are
Yes.
using to validate that transaction.
Thank you.
Anything question? Anything question from participant side? Anybody wants to ask any question from participants? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I want to know. I am from Maharashtra. So, if Maharashtra government want to put this land registration through blockchain, how do they start? What exactly the process should? What can be done there?
Basically, it
Things
is
can be
already, I think, yeah. In the existing also, there is a already existing automated process over there. And now what is required is only to put the existing records also into the blockchain and making a new flow. So in the existing flow, a new flow of adding the records, valid records into the blockchain can be done. So it is not required to completely revamp the existing application, but using the existing application, the flow can be modified. In the flow, we can study the existing records and add blockchain part of it. This is also similar kind of a work we have done for Telangana also. Any more questions?
Yeah. Hello, ma'am.
Huh?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I would like to know, among Hyperledger Fabric, we have various versions and different types. Among that, for banking, which is better?
Usually people in banking will not go for permissioned kind of a network or a permission kind of a platform. They will go for Ethereum or Corda because it is usually for banking kind of applications. They go for permissionless blockchain cryptocurrency.
If only between two banks a particular transaction proof has to be confirmed,
Yeah, there are
then I
certain
need not have customer, right? So I want only banks to be into that particular network. So which is better?
no, can you come again the question?
I don't want customers in between when two banks transaction confirmation has to be done. So I
Right.
want to give authority to only banks. So I want
Right.
a
So
permission one.
those in that case also the banks will become the nodes.
Okay.
Both the banks are nodes and there are no customers otherwise having the nodes. So
So why
these
should
two
I?
banks will communicate with each other. Now, very recently, there is a lot of development happening into Polkadot and side chains. There is a lot of work in interoperability happening. So that now becoming more prominent. There are multi-chain platforms, what we call.
But Hyperledger Fabric can be used in that particular scenario.
You can use it, but with Hyperledger Fabric currently still has a limitation of performance.
Okay.
So the way you are designing your system, that becomes very crucial whenever you are using any kind of blockchain. So take more precautions while designing the system.
Okay. Thank you.
Irrespective of the platform that you choose. But if you want multiple banks to be contributing to it, go for some kind of a multi-chain platforms.
Example, ma'am.
Like Polkadot, Cosmos, sidechains.
Oh.
Hello. The last question from Darshan sir. And if participant, if anybody want to ask a question, actually we already shared mail ID to you. You can write questions to ma'am as well. The last question from Darshan sir. Yes sir. Yes sir. Do you
Hello?
want to ask a question, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yes sir. Yes sir.
Ma'am, another thing is the transaction is stored in the blockchain or just we are storing the hash? Because how we retrieve the
Again, it's again our design. It is not necessary that every time you have to keep the transaction also into the. In the design, you do decide that what will go into blockchain, what will remain at your application database. Usually, we say that depending upon the application. For example, if the issue you have issued the certificate, yes or no, you just want to verify the certificate. In that case, the hash is sufficient. But now, if you are having certain land records, so certain part of land transaction that this was the seller, this was the recipient.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
It will vary
Yes.
from application to application.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But
Now,
ma'am, just you told one thing that certificate validation, but that
Correct.
validation process you have not explained about the validation process. How I can
Validation,
validate?
validation is nothing but only hash. See, if I come up with a certificate, you can actually decrypt that certificate, create a hash of it, and check if that hash already exists. If that hash does not exist, then you know that the certificate is not valid.
okay, thank you, ma'am. If any participant want to ask question, write it in the chat box. Otherwise, I will share you mail ID of ma'am. You can share your questions to ma'am. Now, I will conclude the session. First of all, I am very grateful for accepting my invitation, ma'am. Thank you for enlightening speech. I hope participant clear the concept of blockchain technology and applications. And actually, very nice example is given, ma'am, by our using our institute. I'm very much thankful to ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity to communicate with you all. Thanks a lot and good luck for the remaining sessions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks.
And all participants, our second session will start at 12:15 p.m. to 1:45 p.m. Kindly join for second session. There will be a short break between 12 to 12:15 p.m.
We get access to
Hello.